Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in tonight. My name is Travis Fortney. I'm an adult services librarian at Willoughby Public Library, and we're coming to you live from downtown Willoughby in Lake County, Ohio. Tonight, we're going to talk to Katie Spotz, world record holder and mentor native Katie Spotz, about her her book, Just Keep Rowing. A reminder to everyone, you can keep up with Between the Lines events by checking the library's Facebook page or by looking at the events calendar at we247.org. Tonight, I'm extremely excited to welcome Katie to Between the Lines. Katie is an endurance athlete, a world record holder, an author, and a clean drinking water activist. She also grew up right here in Lake County. In 2010, Katie became the youngest person ever to row across the Atlantic Ocean, spending 70 days alone at sea at age 22. Katie had planned a 2,473-mile westward route from Senegal to French Guiana. En route, she changed course, increasing the total distance by approximately 400 miles, setting Georgetown, Guyana as the terminus for a total distance of 2,817 miles. During her journey, her diet consisted mostly of chocolate bars. No stranger to overcoming challenges, Katie also ran across the Mojave Desert unsupported, cycled across America twice, and is the first person to have swum the 325-mile Allegheny River. She's also run across the states of New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine, all while raising money for safe drinking water projects around the world, totaling over $275,000 in funding. If you have a question for Katie during the program and you're watching on Zoom, type it into chat. I'll be monitoring it, and I'll ask Katie your question during the Q&A. If you're watching on Facebook Live, type your questions and comment there. My colleague will be watching it, and we'll ask Katie your question. To start, Katie has a short video for us, and then we'll move right, and then she'll give a short talk, and we'll move into Q&A. So, Katie, I'll let you take it away.
All right. Looking to the sea, crowds of people wait for me. Seagulls scavenge still ice cream within my dream. Lift my soul down by the sea. Welcome to my rowboat. I'll give you a quick tour. Right over here we have the GPS, fan, AIS, another VHF radio, switch panel. There's the cockpit where I row. Another VHF radio, map of the Atlantic, some bits and bobs, stove, the book. Silicone, catch. And we're having a date on Holder. Yummy. Some visitors. distance. Oh my God, my boat. They're back for dessert. Sunny day on the Atlantic. Show you a little bit of what I do on a daily basis. Thanks for joining me. There's no easy way to do this, Mr. Travis. I'm deciding still whether I should keep rowing to Cayenne or to Suriname, just a country over. It's been a good day rowing, sunny skies, a little bit of rain. Just had a dolphin visit and lots of birds. Oh my God, I woke up and they were right behind me. And I think those are the creepiest looking boats ever. Hello? Video? Oh my God, I feel like an idiot, but I'm afraid to keep them. Okay, they won't go away. Hey, it's time to play in the rain. Ooh. This is very refreshing. It is the final night. I'm 20 miles away, and I can see a soft glow in the distance for land and the lighthouse. So once I wake up in the morning, I should just be there. Let's hope this is the Coast Guard. Otherwise, no, that wasn't the Coast Guard. It's a tanker, and it's right in front of my boat. And I have 5 more miles to go. So I'm looking forward to not having to worry about these anymore. My God. All right, so I am 5 miles away, and I'll be in Georgetown. I see land. I'm about a mile and a half away.
We'd like to welcome home another Katie Spotz, who made history on Sunday, becoming the youngest person and the first woman to row alone across the Atlantic, more than 2,800 miles.
Anderson Cooper, AC 360, CNN weeknights 10 Eastern.
No, it's incredible. 70 days, more than 2,800 miles of open ocean. I mean, I guess the first question is just why? Why this?
Well, it was almost like the idea found me.
I want to be artist.
I want to be an engineer.
Katie here, and I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you. We're putting on the finishing touches for one of the rainwater harvesting systems for a school that will help over 500 children. This wouldn't have been possible without you, so I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Today, there are nearly 1 billion people without access to clean water. When they're thirsty, they can't simply turn on the faucet. Many children in the developing world miss school because they spend more than half of each day walking to collect water. Often, that water is dirty, dangerous, and is the cause of diseases that kill nearly 5,000 children each day. So what can we do? Water is the source of all life. This isn't a campaign. This is our world, and it can be a healthier, happier world with your support today.
All right, well, thank you everyone for joining in tonight. Thank you so much to Willoughby-Eastlake Library for setting this up for the authors series. I know some have already read the book, Just Keep Rowing, and there's nothing like seeing the video and seeing what it was like there in person. So that video is actually something that isn't on YouTube. It's not online anywhere. So I hope you enjoyed seeing what it was actually like out there. And for those of you who did read the book, I did share a story on day 64, and we're gonna have a pretty casual night with Q&A, but I did wanna share with you one of the lessons and one of the stories that was woven into my row. So it's September of 2009, and I am pulling my bright yellow 19-foot rowboat somewhere close to the Willoughby Library, close to downtown Cleveland. Perhaps it's somewhere some of you have gone before. It's Edgewater Marina. It was my last big training row before my row across the Atlantic. There was a coolness in the air, and it was a sign that the summer days were coming to an end. For that day, I had planned a 40-mile training row. It was going to be all the way from the west side of Cleveland to the east side. That journey was anticipated to take about 10 to 12 hours to match the 10 to 12 hours that I would be rowing while I was out at sea. Now, you see, rowing an ocean rowboat and rowing in open water is nothing like rowing in the gym. the best way for me to describe what ocean rowing is like is trying to row while riding a bull. It's not graceful, you're not in sync, and it can be awkward at best and dangerous at worst. So if you don't put in your oar at the exact right moment, that could mean broken ribs or bruised knees. So I really had to get out on that open water as much as possible so I can kind of learn and focus on what it would be like to row across the Atlantic. So I begin my journey, and about 8 hours into that journey, the winds, they began to change. And I realized that going on that training row on that particular day was a mistake. I was 1 mile away from land. I was not too close, so I wouldn't be, crashing into anything near land. And I wasn't too far that if I needed help or assistance, that I could be close enough to come into a yacht club or any pier. So I was maintaining that 1 mile distance from land. And as the winds began to change, I was being pushed closer and closer into land. So if you know anything lakes and Lake Erie in particular, it is the most shallow lake. So when things do change, when the weather, when the winds do change, they change very quickly. This might not be a problem if you were rowing somewhere else, but on Lake Erie, it definitely was, because there aren't sandy beaches that are all around the shores. It's mostly jagged rocks and steep cliffs. I knew that I needed help or else I would be crashing against these cliffs. So I call for help on my VHF radio and I let out an anchor, and I am rowing as hard as I possibly can. I go back to the oars and I am rowing as hard as I possibly can. My lungs are burning, my quads and my back muscles are burning, and I just don't have enough more in my body at that moment. And that's life. Sometimes you could give everything you got and it's not enough. This was not enough. So I'm getting closer and closer to land, and the only thing that I could think to do is to let out my oar to brace for impact for that inevitable crash. The first crash, my oar was shattered completely. I'm thrown back into the lake, and there were 2 or 3 more times where I'm crashing against these cliffs. And I don't mean to be overly dramatic. And I think if you know me, you know that I'm not one to, make a big deal of things, but I knew that if it landed a certain way, that it could be life or death. Eventually, I was wedged into a cliff and I climbed to the top. I'm seeing bright lights, I'm seeing an ambulance, I'm seeing police and neighbors. I'm taken into the ambulance, rushed in there right away, and they ask me how I'm doing. They ask me if I'm okay. And I have complete tunnel vision. I can't hear anything they're saying. And all I can see is my boat. All I can say is my boat, my boat, my boat. So this wasn't just any rowboat. You can't go to Dick's Sporting Goods and pick one up. If you ask any ocean rower, they'll tell you that it is not real. The dream, the vision, the goal is not real unless and until you have this rowboat. Seeing my boat smash up against these cliffs was like seeing my dreams shattering in front of me without being able to do anything about it. Because it was so incredibly rough, there weren't any boats, there were no towing companies that were willing or able to go and get that boat. So I left it there overnight. I wait. I go back to my parents' house, and it was almost like a sense of relief that it was over, that they didn't have to worry about their 22-year-old daughter being alone at sea, and rightfully so. My parents' reaction was much gentler, much more gentle than the reaction that I got that next morning. I go back to the boat, and that morning people are with their iPhones and their cameras, taking pictures of me, taking pictures of the boat, asking me the question, if I can't even row across Lake Erie, what makes me think that I can row across an ocean? And I didn't have an answer. I had a problem that needed to be solved. And because no boats were able to get that boat out, even the next day, I hire a crane, and they are able to lift it out for $2,000. And that day, I am driving 1,000 miles to Rhode Island to the original boat builder to see if it was beyond hope, if it was able to be repaired, and if I would be able to do that row a few months later. So there they are, lifting it out. The next time that I would row that boat was January 3rd of 2010, and I'm in Dakar, Senegal. That's the most western part of Africa. I have my 2 oars, 4 iPods, 300 chocolate bars, and a lot of determination. You'll notice I don't have a follow boat, so I didn't have anyone following behind me. I was completely alone for those 70 days. During those 70 days, I experienced everything you could imagine. I had starry nights. I had the most stunning sunsets. I was surrounded by pods of dolphins that would do flips, tricks, and cheer me on in the ocean. I had 30-foot waves, potential pirates, very extreme sleep deprivation, and very close calls with freighters. And when I landed, I went from complete solitude to being in front of millions. Interviewing with Katie Couric, Anderson Cooper, Diane Sawyer, NPR, among others. I was even selected as Glamour Magazine's Woman of the Year, and meeting people like Oprah and Fergie and Jennifer Lopez, Julia Roberts, all these very famous people I'd never thought I'd meet. And they kept asking me the same question. In the Anderson Cooper video, in the introduction video, and that was why. And it was the perfect platform and the perfect way to tell people about a crisis, really a crisis. Did you know that there is a water crisis in our world right now? It's really hard to imagine, but at the time that I did my journey, it was 1 billion people, or 1 in 8 people, that didn't have something that I've always taken for granted, something I've never gone without. So these 1 billion people, they get their water from awful places, and it makes them sick, from ponds, muddy rivers, dry riverbeds. Sometimes they're getting it from puddles in the ground. Millions of kids are walking each and every day just to collect dirty water. So the row was not just about personal achievement and world records. It was a row for water. And because of that row, because of other campaigns over the past several years, that the total has been $400,000, helping 10,000 people get clean water for life. So when I hopped on tonight, you probably thought I was going to maybe share about how hard the journey was, and how many challenges I faced out at sea, but that was not. The real challenge happened before the journey ever began. the real challenge was checking my inbox one day and hearing this. This was an email from my mom. Now, about your new adventure, Dad said if Katie goes on that adventure, you might as well kiss her goodbye. She will not make it. The hard part was checking out the New York Times and reading about how they thought it was very unlikely that I would succeed. They said, Spotz, who grew up in Mentor, Ohio, seems like an unlikely addition to the list. Even now, she displays none of the exotic musculature that one might expect of a person who expects to row 2,500 miles. The hardest part was all the doubt from others, all the doubt that I had within myself. I had all those doubts, and I realized that just because you don't think something's possible doesn't mean it's true. If there's any advice that I can share with you from my journeys, it's this. Do not feed your doubt. Stop saying to yourself, this is so hard. Stop telling yourself maybe you can quit. Stop listening to the criticism. Stop letting that record play. To believe that there is one option, one singular option, which is to do what you said you were going to do. Believe that there is only one way, and you may soon find yourself on the other side. Thank you.
Whoa, thanks. That was great. I'm glad you talked about Lake Erie there, and that was one of my favorite parts of the book. That the story of the crash there. I was wondering, where exactly did you crash? I mean, where exactly?
So I was about 2 or 3 miles away from the Mentor Harbor Yacht Club. So that's where I usually did all my training rows out of, but it was like someone's backyard.
Yes, but it was like somewhere east of or west of Mentor.
Yeah, I think it would technically still be Mentor on the
Oh
lake.
yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, yeah. It's interesting. I actually have I recently, like, I kayak in Lake Erie all the time, and recently I was out in a kayak and it got wavy like that, and I was probably a mile out, and I had the wrong boat for Lake Erie, but I had one of these kayaks that has the, like it's kind of like a canoe almost, and waves crashed over it, and it just all of a sudden it was just like whoosh underwater, and but in that I actually tied it to myself and swim back because there was no way to get it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that most people think the ocean would be more dangerous, but when you have 30-foot waves in the Atlantic, what are you going to hit? Nothing. So like, obviously you can capsize, but my boat was self-righting. But on in the Great Lakes, there's other cliffs, there's other boats, there's a lot more traffic. So I've definitely felt less of those type of hazards or dangers to be.
Yeah, it's too bad you put it in on a rocky part there. The beaches are, because I know that area, the coastline or the shoreline of Lake Erie pretty well too, and there's some beaches, but they're few and far between. Probably 10% of it is beach or something.
Exactly.
Or sand beach. So did you ever, so someone asked this on the Zoom, on the group chat, but I was wondering it too. Did you ever capsize the boat on your trip? I mean, did you ever test out that you're in a boat, it's designed to take 30-foot waves, and it's got these airtight hatches that make it so it can capsize and right itself.
Exactly. So my boat was self-righting, and some of it was the design, the hull of the boat. It was also, I had ballast water, and I had like seat belts, so I strapped myself in to help with the self-righting. I didn't I mean, my boat was used, so the test dummy was the person who did it before me in the boat, I guess you can say. But I didn't actually flip while I was training for the row or test that out. But now that I'm in the Coast Guard, there's something called Dunker School, and I might be able to do that, where I go through a simulation where it's a boat capsizing and you have to practice getting out. So that's something that
Yeah.
I might be able to do in the next year or so. So,
Yeah, well, that's exciting.
yeah.
So let's see, a lot of questions here, and I knew there would be, but there's a lot of questions from the audience coming in too.
Oh, cool.
I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So, so what kind of, first question, where did you first learn that rowing across the Atlantic Ocean was a thing that people do? I mean, how do you, doing this only, I think it says in your book, 340 people had done it at that time. How did you hear about it?
So there have been more people on the moon. There have been more people on Mount Everest. So there's a at the time that I did it. So I was living in Australia, and it was right after I did my first ultra marathon. It was a 62-mile run. And I think there is a period, at least for me, when you think you can't do something and then you actually do it, you start to wonder, what are all the other self-limiting, what are all the other things that I'm saying that I can't do that maybe I can? So my eyes were open to like, wow, our bodies are so capable, and like, wow, like, so I was on a bus, and I did this small talk with the guy sitting next to me, and we get on the topic of endurance challenges, and I kind of tuned it out because I was like, oh, he's gonna say all the things I already know, and I was just being a little stubborn 21-year-old. And he mentioned that his friend rowed across the Atlantic, and I didn't know. It just was like, no way. And so it wasn't this immediate, oh, I have to do it. It was an immediate, oh, I have to find out more. And so it continued to be late nights looking on the internet, and then it turned out to be emailing and calling and seeing the boats. And the more I found out about it, the more it just, like, my imagination went wild, just wondering and wondering and wondering. And after all of that wondering, I tried to talk myself out of it, but I came to the point where I was either going to row across the Atlantic, or I would spend the rest of my life wondering why I didn't. And so a lifetime versus 70 days, I was like, well, I mean, yeah, I was very hesitant and reluctant to take on this challenge. And there were times when I wished it would like bother someone else, but I think that's sometimes what a calling can feel like, that there is a lot of resistance and fear. And I mean, who am I to think I could row across the Atlantic? I didn't even know how to row at the time, but yeah, I definitely felt the call.
I was wondering that. So yeah, the kind of the idea of becoming someone who rowed across the Atlantic came first, and then kind of becoming an ocean rower itself became second, just in service of that mission.
Yeah. So I would say that I did learn to row during my senior year of college, but if you were a real, like a collegiate rower, if you had that expertise, it might actually make you less likely to enjoy ocean rowing, because on the river, you're used to everything being in sync. You're used to everything like feeling like really connected to the water. And this was so awkward. It wasn't graceful. So I think it was almost to my benefit that I had nothing to compare it to, and nothing to be like, I wish it felt like I'm used to it feeling. And so in that regard, I think it was helpful. I mean, and I did have a base of cardio from doing other adventures like the swim and biking and running.
So someone asked in chat, and I actually wrote down a very similar question, but what sort of training went into, you know, a typical training day before, you know, in the months before your trip? And then I was also like, as a second part to that question, did the kind of solitude in the boat, do you feel like that helped you like in the pandemic or in the, you know, in the time we're in right now? That's probably a new question for you, but I guess those are two separate questions. So first part first,
Yeah.
what's a typical training day?
So for the row and for a lot of adventures, like the last one I did was running across Maine. And so it was a very long, you know, endurance event. So there's a few things that I always try to incorporate. And it's usually weekends are kind of like Weekend Warrior, where you're like, for my marathons and Ironmans, it's usually weekends you do the super long, and then you supplement that with some weekday, maybe some tempo or speed work. But for the row, I would say I actually have trained more for Ironmans than I have for the row in terms of gym time. With the row, there was the logistics of the boat, there was sponsorship, there was the fundraising, and on a different level, and working full time. So you could be the most fit person in the world, but if you don't have a rowboat, you're not going to row the Atlantic. So I definitely had to, you know, balance a lot of different tasks to be able to do that journey. And for ocean rowing, one thing is your form. Like, you can easily pull your muscles if your form is off. So I did focus a lot on core strength and just kind of getting into like the stabilizing muscles so that there's not muscle imbalances and foam rolling. And I mean, I do feel like, because I had done marathons and that kind of thing, my cardio was probably, you know, in a decent place. It was just a matter of getting my body comfortable with the rowing position, with the oars, breaking everything in. And so, yeah. And in terms of the pandemic, I did write about it in the book, about like the differences between you know, feeling lonely and isolation and solitude. And I feel like this row obviously helped me overcome this fear I had of I had never spent more than maybe 48 hours by myself. And so that was a real fear that I had, like, what's going to happen to me if I don't see another human for 70 days? I've never experienced that. I have no point of reference to have any kind of confidence. And for me, confidence happens as a result of doing the thing. I think that the road definitely taught me how to embrace those quieter moments and how to enjoy that, and to kind of find peace with that. And also, I was probably one of the furthest humans away from all the other humans. And I think what was really beautiful that I experienced out there is I didn't feel lonely. And I did feel very connected, even if my satellite phone wasn't working that day, like, because, you know, the love I have from friends and family, and just support from different schools that we're following, and sponsors. And so I definitely think that there is this innate bond that we can feel and have for each other, even if we're not physically there. And I did, you know, for people who supported it, they can have their picture on the boat. And so I got to see all my, friends and that kind of thing. And then one Rotary club, they donated, or they made a mini Wilson, like instead of the volleyball, because space was tight, they had a little tennis ball version that they gifted me with. And then their club had the twin, and every week a member gave a report. So, I had little things on the boat to help remind me that I wasn't alone. And we can feel alone, but we aren't alone, even if we
Yeah, that I was interested in all the, I mean, there's in the book, there's, just to pitch the book for people, there's quite a bit of the, of talk about meditation and spirituality and things like that. I was interested in how you were, growing up and mentor, how were you exposed to like the, kind of Eastern religions, or the idea of meditation, or enlightenment, or I mean, there's just an awful lot of that in your book, and I was just wondering, I don't know, not that Lake County doesn't seem like a very Zen place, but I wouldn't see, someone from Lake County being exposed to a lot of that stuff at an early age. So
yeah, so one of my friends, when I was 19, I signed up for a bike ride across the United States for the American Lung Association in memory of my grandma who passed away from lung disease. And one of my good friends from that bike ride, he was in Thailand, and he was staying at a monastery, and he ended up doing this 10-day meditation retreat. And he was saying how it was the most difficult thing he had ever done. And because we cycled across America as teens, that was something that I thought was really, it intrigued me. So since then, I think it's kind of the footprints in the sand. Like, I didn't have a relationship with God. I was raised Catholic, but I think a part of growing up is just, learning and experiencing and questioning and doubting your belief systems. But I am definitely a believer now, and I feel like there's God all over everything, whether it's getting in the accident and just giving me the ability to do this. So that's kind of where I am now. The book was written, let's see, maybe 3 years after the row, and I've become a Christian about 3 years ago. So that is something new, but I do have a video on YouTube that kind of talks more about my journey to faith. And I think what really led me there was reaching this high moment and yet feeling internally just kind of a low. And world standards said I should feel good, I should be, all this success. And once I got there, it was kind of this feeling of wait, where's the promises that the world says if you do good things, if you do this. And so that emptiness is where I started to question, and a friend shared her faith with me. So yeah, I do. There is a YouTube video more about how faith has become a part of the journey.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've talked to a lot of like authors on these talks, and a lot of people talk about how they work so long toward publishing their first book, and then they get, I think that's somewhat similar to your row across the ocean. And then they get there and they publish it, and maybe they have some acclaim, or they've reached this goal that they've been working toward, and they've other people have talked about that too, that feeling of emptiness, or just like getting low and depressed and not understanding why, or not feeling not feeling like they should be depressed. And
yeah, it's very interesting because you think that reaching the goal is like I guess succeeding at something could be a huge loss, because if your purpose is in worldly achievement, if your purpose is in even helping others without God, like it's almost like, okay, well, I reached my goal, but I lost my purpose. So that could be very disorienting. And so that's kind of where faith fit the pieces that I was definitely missing in my life. And yeah, I mean, for me, it took a little bit of humility because, yeah,
yeah, I've never heard it put that way, but I think a lot of people would agree with that. I reached my goal, but I lost my purpose. So there you go. That's a T-shirt or something. I don't know. So I want to get back to the trip and back to the boat.
Yes.
There's a lot of questions in chat about Liv, the boat, and I have some questions too. I wonder if you could talk about where, you talk about in the book the journey of finding the boat, kind of. You talk about finding another boat, and I couldn't help but imagine you like trying this row in a wood rowboat instead. That could have been a whole nother trip maybe, or more scary, I guess. But could you talk about finding Liv, how you paid for her? You said she's cost $40,000 and you had sponsors.
Yes. So, yeah, as I was sharing the accident on Lake Erie, there's a lot more, there's successes, but there's, fall 7 times, get up 8 kind of, all over this journey and all my journeys. It's definitely a lot of failures to the inevitable, success. But I was a senior in college, and there was a website called the Ocean Rowing Society. Since then, the president or founder has passed, so I don't think it's an active site anymore. But that is kind of like the Craigslist of ocean rowboats, and that is where I saved up, and I had maybe $8,000 of my own money saved for the rowboats idea. And I was just thinking of, doing it with my own, my own raising money and work and everything like that. And I wasn't familiar with the sponsorship type thing. And every adventure before the row was self-funded on a shoestring type events. And so I did find this rowboat. It was in Costa Rica, and I couldn't get it out of the country. And there were so many obstacles to try to get it out of the country. And I guess it was illegal for the people who sold it to me because they didn't get it out of the country on time. And so I basically was not able to get all that money back. I was so frustrated because I felt, taken advantage of by the ocean rowing community. It was a really hard thing to have that kind of setback just from the beginning. So it was a back to the drawing board moment. And I got a email or call from Ron Clutter, who is the founder behind Spire in Geneva. And he emailed me and was like, "Oh, I read about what you're doing in some kind of local magazine." He's like, "I'd love to learn more." And there was no way Liv would have been possible without their support. So it was, the sporting complex was called Great at the time, but now it's Spire. And they were the title sponsor for that. And so they were generous enough to help with funding that that rowboat. So that's how I got it. But this picture you can kind of see, it was, it had all the technology that you would need, the solar panels, desalinator, radar, VHF radio, GPS, all that fun stuff.
Can you talk about what the boat is made of? And you said in the book it's made of Arex foam.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a composite build. So once it was like, without all my food and everything, I think it was like 400 pounds. So it's very strong and it's very lightweight. Yeah, I'm like, even with biking, like when people ask me about my bike, I'm like, all I know is I like to ride it. Like, I definitely took some classes and learned how to use the gear and did some like troubleshooting, but yeah, that's kind of as far as I know about the.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just interested in so let's see here.
It protected me from the flying fish. That's all I got hit by.
All you got hit by is flying fish. Yeah. So
Yeah.
looking at that picture, I read the book on like a little Kindle, so it just had black and white pictures.
This one might
So
be
I hadn't really seen like a great picture of your boat, but looking at it there, it strikes me how small it is, and I wonder if you felt like it was tiny in the ocean. I wonder when you were most afraid of the weather, what the biggest fish you saw on the trip was, things like that.
So in the video, you might have seen a little bit of the insides of the boat, but so the bow, right where I'm climbing out of, that was all storage. So that was definitely not living. And I guess the best like thing that you might identify, but like it was almost like sleeping in a coffin. Like I did feel like it was almost like a cocoon, and like I had everything I needed. And once I overcame my fear of jumping in the water, it was really nice because I had like it was really like I had my own little aquarium down there, and I didn't realize how many fish were following. And so I was okay with the living situation. And last year I was able to get on the Eagle. So the Coast Guard did a 2-week training to Philadelphia from New London, and I felt more claustrophobic on that boat just because even the bed, like you would hit your knees when you bent your knees, so you couldn't even bend your knees while you were in bed. So I, like, comparing it to Coast Guard boats, I was like, I'd rather be on my rowboat. So I felt comfortable in it. And then, sorry, you said, what was the other question?
Oh, just what was the biggest fish you saw on the trip?
The tuna fish.
Oh, just the tuna. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I didn't know if you saw any whales or anything like that. I think the two most visceral parts of the book for me though were the crash on Lake Erie, and then when you talk about swimming for the first time. To me, that just seemed it's almost unimaginable. I swim in Lake Erie all the time, and for some reason, whenever I get out deep and can't see the bottom, there's just some part of being human that it's terrifying. And I think so anyway. So I can't imagine being out in the ocean with 6,000 feet of ocean between your tiny boat and the bottom and nothing.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering because you didn't talk much about swimming after that first time, but you did swim regularly after that?
I did. So of course I was always tethered to it. Yeah, I think, of course, I was afraid that like the second I get out into the water that like sharks are all like, ooh, food. So I was always like looking around and making sure, but you never really know. For me, because I was rowing near the equator, it was 80 to 90 degrees, and no, like there aren't many rules about ocean rowing, but you're not allowed to have a canopy because it would be considered a type of sail. So I was very much exposed to the sun and the yeah. And so it came to the point where I'm like, I am so hot. I feel like passing out. And so that kind of helped push me over to finally jump in. And another thing was like just getting back into the boat. If you're really fatigued, could have been, challenging. But yeah, after I went the first time, then I pretty much went every single day just to
Oh
cool
yeah.
off. And there's really not a lot of like entertainment I had out there. Like I did have a couple movies that I watched, and my journey would have taken 69 days, but I took one day just to watch movies and feel sorry for myself and eat a lot of chocolate in the cabin. But
I can't believe it was only one. I would have taken like at least 30 days to do that. So you're doing pretty well.
yeah.
But yeah, I know in your remarks earlier, you said you took 4 iPods with you. So that was something I was wondering is, man, if you dropped your iPod, that would be too bad. But I guess you were prepared for that one. So that's your most important item.
I did like, I was like, oh, I'm going to learn Spanish out here and I'm going to listen to all these audiobooks. But it was, I did have to stay pretty focused and in terms of like constantly looking and assessing and figuring out exactly when to put my oar in the water. And I kind of like getting in the zone. And so I didn't end up reading or listening to many books, but my biggest treat was listening to Comedy Central Presents. Like I only had maybe eight hours of that. And so it was like, I would only listen to it for.
Yeah, you'd save it as a treat type thing.
Yeah.
So question from the audience. Well, let's see. So how much preparation went into the mental side of the challenge? What I mean, is that something you can riff off of? Like,
yeah. So I did work with a sports psychologist, and we met up maybe 2 times a month for the year leading up to it. And I mean, yeah, the last 3 months I definitely needed that because one of the hardest moments was going to the airport, in the Cleveland Hopkins airport, and my family was there, my parents, my 2 brothers, my sister. And once I got over on the other side of the gate and we saw each other for it was like we all knew it without saying it that might be the last time. And half of the people who attempt ocean rowing, they don't make it. I didn't want my parents to be in Africa because I think that would have been so hard to leave seeing the people that you love and not knowing if that would be the last time. And so so that sports psychologist, I mean, we talked about things about challenges at sea, but then also some of those very real challenges before, like, okay, who knows if I'm going to make this, and how is that affecting, my mindset. But the book does mention some of the meditation retreats that I went on. And so it may seem a little like, why is meditating anything like rowing? But these meditation retreats were like 10 days at a time. There was no reading, no writing, no human contact. There were other participants, but you had to have your eyes gazed down towards the ground just so that eye contact is a form of communication. And so in some ways, I thought these 10-day retreats were more difficult than the row, because during the row, I was distracted. I had the wildlife to look at. I had my emails to check. I had a task to do. And so I think that really helped with the mental preparation, because really in the meditation, you're witnessing and sitting with thoughts. And you have to be like, at a certain point, if you're meditating 10 hours or 12 hours a day for 10 days, you're not going to want to do that. You're going to be very resistant. You're going to want to be anywhere else. And like, those are the exact types of thoughts and feelings that I had to sit with in the Atlantic. I had to sit with moments where I said, what did I get myself into? I'm so exhausted. And I did at the halfway point. You know, most people think halfway, I'm closer to the end now. But me, I was like, halfway? I don't think I could do that again. And so I definitely struggled with sleep deprivation. And at the halfway mark, I ran out of sleep meds. And so I had no guaranteed, and I didn't want to become reliant on sleeping medication. So that was part of the plan, not to have a ton of it. And because I needed to wake up if my alarm was going off to let other boats know that I was there. So, and even the sports psychologist helped, because there's this thing that happens, like one of the worst forms of punishment is solitary confinement. And what happens, like when people are in like jail, right? And they're like living that life. And when they come out of it, there's this thing where like you actually want to go back into solitary confinement. You actually want to go back into this. And the thing about the row, even though the weather and there were so many things out of my control, it was almost like I had my own little like controlled universe of like, and my whole existence was just go in a direction. And so it was a simple, very simple life. And even when the journey ended, I knew I struggled with things like making decisions. And I mean, I remember going to the grocery store and I was so overwhelmed by all the colors and the smells and like the idea of picking out a toothpaste when there's like 20 different and I didn't have any choices for 3 months. I didn't have I already knew what I was going to eat, what I was going to do, what I was going to wear or not wear, and like what I was going to listen to. And so there's a lot of mental stuff that was part of that deal. And I'm definitely glad I had a chance to work with the sports psychologist through all that. And just, having good friends and family that were supportive. And
do you still have the boat? I mean, do you still have the rowboat? And do you think about going on another trip like this ever, or?
So I know some people are very attached to their boat, but I'm like, it served the purpose that I, saw in it, and I want to see it go to the next adventure.
Yeah.
And so I did sell it within 6 months. And it was another woman who wanted to row across the Atlantic. She was having some second thoughts and nightmares about it. So she ended up rowing around Lake Michigan instead. But my last adventure was a couple months ago, running across the state of Maine. So that was a 138-mile run that took about 33 hours nonstop. And so I definitely I mean,
you're still adventuring, but not rowing anymore. Or do you think you just had enough of the rowing? I'm just curious.
So I'm not one to have like the bucket list. I definitely feel like kind of like a calling, and so if I feel like God's calling me towards it, of course, like I will listen, and I do have a little bit of a sense that there's probably more to come. Yeah.
Are you at all following? I was Googling, I guess Googling you or something, right before the talk, and I saw that there's a girl from England who's currently out on the Atlantic. Did you know that? And she's vying to become the youngest person, the youngest woman to cross the Atlantic. Are you following her trip at all? I mean,
I am not, but I mean, when I've been talking to schools, on behalf of H2O for Life, and I'm like, go break that record as long as you're gonna do it for a good cause. So I'm actually surprised that the record hasn't been broken yet, because it's been 11 years now. So I was I thought I would have not. I'm surprised that it's been, there hasn't been more people to do it. But
well, it's quite the thing to do, I would say. I mean, it seems like people do it, but not that many. It doesn't happen that often.
Years?
11 years it's just a blip. It'll happen. I was looking at her, at the person who's rowing across the Atlantic. I was looking at her Facebook just before we came on here, and she's been having some issues, and she's been drifting for 2 weeks or something. So your record may stand. Who knows? But all the best to her, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But
I would say, I mean, honestly, I don't keep up with the ocean rowing community, and even before my row, I was more interested in the technical questions, and I didn't really want to ask too much about the more personal like stuff, because there's something about doing things you've never done before, that you don't have a preconceived notion of what it's going to be like. So I was just trying to have kind of a authentic experience. So I sometimes don't ask about or follow or compare. And I honestly think my mom was the one who was following all these other ocean rowers while I was out on the ocean too, just kind of comparing. And I don't know, some people are like, you make it sound fun, like what's going on? And so I did write a few blogs where I was like, no, there are things that aren't fun about it. And I don't know.
Did you ever lose touch with your parents when, like, on the row? I mean, did you ever lose communication?
There were times when my satellite phone, like there was issues with the connection, and there were times where like I just felt like I needed a break, because like I already knew my parents were super stressed about me being out there. So if I was feeling really low and I was feeling really, I wouldn't dare tell them, because I wouldn't want, just to protect like, what they were going through, because I think on their end it might have been more difficult because they're sitting at home worrying, and I was very focused on the row. So I did have some friends, and one of them was also an ocean rower, so he was there in West Africa, and then he was also there in South America. And so that was really helpful, because when I was feeling really, really low, I could call him, and he could, at least because he had also rowed the Atlantic solo, that was really helpful to talk to someone who had experienced it as well. So
yeah, cool. Some people have asked some really interesting logistical questions, and I'm interested too. So, but how did you keep the boat stable at night? how did you not veer too far off course?
So yeah, it wasn't very stable. Like it did rock a lot. So the only thing that I did was I used the safety belts and I strapped myself into bed. So there were 3 straps. And if there's one thing that I regretted during the journey, it would have been bringing like beanie bag chairs, like, and wedging myself into bed, just because I would do that with my dry beds and my dry bags. I would stuff clothing and food bags, and I'd kind of like pack myself into bed. But just the constant moving and rolling would wake me up. And then
Yeah, someone else asked if you ever got used to sleeping or how you slept, but it sounds kind of like that part was a little awful and you got sleep deprived toward the end. Is that
Yeah.
fair to say? Yeah.
So I had insomnia. Like I would wake up every 2 or 3 hours. Sometimes it was because of the rocking. Other times it was because of the flying fish hitting the sides of the cabin. Sometimes it could be just like opening up the hatch, because I had a little 4-inch fan, but because the boat, to keep itself righting, you had to close the hatches. So sometimes I would wake up just to like get some fresh air, and I never slept with like a sleeping bag. It was way too hot for that. So I did reach a point where, yeah, I was so tired that I couldn't sleep. I definitely had insomnia, and there's a certain point when your body is like, hey, I need sleep. Hey, sleep would be nice. And if you ignore it or you can't give yourself sleep, it's kind of like your body stops asking for it. And so it was this, And any athlete would say that the most important thing, like for recovery, is sleep. That's when your body rebuilds. And so I didn't feel like strong after that journey. I felt very depleted. I couldn't walk. Like I had to learn how to walk. I had to learn how to use my muscles in that way, because I hadn't been walking for months. So I wasn't, and then I had to heal. Like on the ocean, when you're constantly being hit by water, if you have a wound, it's not healing when it's constantly exposed to water. And of course I bandage things and do what I can, but at the end of the day, I was exposed to the elements all day, every day. So definitely had to heal, definitely had to get back on a normal sleep schedule. And
did you sleep well as soon as you came back, or did it took a while did it take a while to get back to sleeping, or did you,
like I was just the media type stuff. I was very, I had a lot, like for
must
me,
have been, yeah.
My comfort zone was very much being at sea. And I definitely know how that is a huge gift and tool to be a voice for people that don't have one with clean water. So I was definitely really excited to do what I could to spread the message about the cause. However, like me personally, I'm very introverted, and the row was my comfort zone, more so than national TV. So I felt a little overwhelmed by all that, and so focused on the journey that I didn't even think like, oh whoa, how do you, and so kind of
it sounds like it was pretty jarring re-entry, I guess, to say the least.
But really good for the cause. So like I'm definitely
so that's great. So I want to ask a couple more of the logistical questions, but then I want to have you talk about the cause of clean water more. And a few people have asked, kind of how you came to that and whatnot. So put that in the back of your mind, I guess.
Okay, sounds good.
How did you get the boat to Africa at the start of the trip?
So If you see on this boat, actually, there's a logo for World Shipping, and they're in Rocky River. So they were super helpful. I shipped it on a trailer, and it was a little bit more than 20 feet. So it was actually in a 40-foot container. It took nearly a month. I was in Africa for several weeks, and there were storms on the Atlantic. So it did take a while for it to get there, but everything was packed in that shipping container. And the same way once it was in Guyana. And shipping actually was really nice from Guyana because it is the only English speaking country in South America. But yeah, just the shipping container.
Oh, here's another question for you. It's Katie. Your cousin Tim says hello.
Hello.
Secondly, so hi Tim.
Hey, Tim.
Secondly, the book is awesome. Katie, I've heard you speak before that you never consider yourself an athlete. Would you speak to this now? Your accomplishments surpass mere imagination of endurance experiences. Do you see yourself as an athlete now?
Yes, sure. I think that there's an athlete waiting in all of us to come out. And what I mean by that is, like, I think we all have a potential. And yeah, I don't know. There's like different, like, cute little quotes about like what it means to be a runner, and as long as you're moving forward, then you're a runner, and like getting into the titles. And yeah, I mean, I'm definitely very grateful and appreciative for what my body's enabled me to do, and also want to, stay humble in it. And so yeah, I don't know.
Another person asked she said that she's a sailor and sails on Lake Erie, and was wondering if you sail, or if you think sailing would be meditative in a similar way to rowing. I don't know.
So I'm a real big fan of endorphins, and like that's one of the reasons why, like, even the run across Maine, I really enjoy it around mile 50 or 60 when I'm like 8 hours in, and there's just so many endorphins, and I don't even feel pain anymore. And it's just like you are just feel like you could go forever. And I love really getting into my body. And I have sailed a couple times. But I just think that there's this space and endurance, this like, there's not many things that I've experienced that you can just kind of have this Zen, like you're not thinking, but you're no thinking and all focus, like focusing on your breathing. And so I think it is enjoyable, but I don't foresee any big sailing journeys.
Yeah.
But in the Coast Guard, I'm able to be out on boats pretty often. So
Yeah. Let's see. Could you, so if you had any advice for like a young person who had I guess you could even go more general, but what would the first thing for a young person to do who wants to try rowing across the Atlantic? I mean, start looking on the Craigslist of rowboats. What would be the first thing? I'm just curious.
Well, I mean, I was a real dork about how I approached my journey, but I mean, first step was reading and researching, and I made a business plan about it, and like I was taking a course, and I found that, like, to really just sit down and ask yourself, okay, what would I do for this? What would I do? And it's not about everything being set in stone, but it's about coming forth with a plan and what your goals and plans and vision. And like even now, I still get scrolls of wrapping paper and I'll put them on the wall, and I'll have goals and visions, and I'll break it down. And I think it's really helpful to write things down, and then I had people review the business plan and give me feedback and ask me, oh, I was like, I had my family read it too, like sharing it with friends. And I think, yeah, putting together a plan is where it's all at. And anytime anyone asks you, okay, well, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about that? And just kind of making your own base of knowledge and learning as much as you can beforehand. Yeah, and email me, ask me questions if you
Yeah, there you go. So if you could talk a little bit about the Clean Water Initiative. Someone wants to know how you first became aware of those issues and what made you decide to make them the reason for the row, and why have you remained passionate about it for so many years?
So, of course, there are so many worthwhile causes to support. And I found out about water the same place that I found out about ocean rowing. I was doing a semester in Australia, and they were experiencing a drought. So it was in all the headlines about their water shortages. And you started seeing things like, okay, when you can and can't water your grass, if you can or can't wash your car. And to see that kind of response in a very developed country was shocking for me. And then I was taking an environmental science class, and one of my professors said, the wars of the future are going to be on water. And in some countries, it's already the case. And that was like dropping a bomb. Like I was like, what do you mean that there's wars over water? That's the thing that, it was equivalent to someone saying that someone's going to war over air. I just couldn't imagine something as basic as water. And I feel like there was like a journey of like confusion and anger, and like, I had to really work through that, because it was, yeah, my worldview was definitely changing. And I did feel kind of guilty, and about my how much I didn't appreciate it. But then on the other side of that was a lot of hope, and I was really excited to see so many good projects and impact. And there's a lot of causes, and like, funding hospitals, of course, that's a great idea. And then when I found out about water, half of the hospital beds are filled because of illnesses related to unsafe drinking water. So education, of course, that's a great thing to support. When kids are not able to go to school or get an education, young females are dropping out of school because there's no latrines. When they hit puberty, they can't go anywhere. And so I am really excited about water, because it is that first step out of a different life. It's the first step out of poverty. And with supporting and helping with this one thing, it really spreads out. And I visited a project in South Africa, and they were very much affected by the community by AIDS, and some of the caretakers were grandparents. And so they couldn't even feed these kids. But because this school had a water project, they were able to get water there, but they were also able to have a garden. So with that garden, they were also able to, that was their one meal for the day. And then they had an excess, so that was their meal to take home. And so like just to hear those stories and see that impact. And I think it was in a documentary I watched recently with Matt Damon, and he said, imagine that there's the cure for childhood cancer, and in 50 years from now there's still all these kids with cancer. And that's kind of, drawing the parallel with clean water. Like, we do have the solutions. You don't have to throw money and never know whether the research is where the results of that funding is. You can see it. And right now I'm partnered with H2O for Life, and it's to the point where you can see pictures, you can really find out names of the communities and have relationships, and really connect in a way that I think is really special and meaningful. So right now I have adopted a clean water project in Ethiopia. And so that's a $6,000 project. And if anyone wants to support it, there is a link just on my website, katiespotz.com, and 100% goes to the water project. And the book sales also support clean water projects. So
Yeah, you can buy the book on Amazon, right? I didn't mention that before at the outset, but I believe the book is for sale on Amazon. Go get it. Yeah, at the library we're having in June. Oh man, I'm gonna forget the guy's name, but his first name is Julio, and he is the head of water development or something for the Nature Conservancy. He's Italian and he works in the UK, but anyway, he wrote a book called Water: A Biography, and so it's like my favorite. It's one of my favorite upcoming author visits. So everyone look out for that one in June.
Ooh, cool.
I'll email all of you. Don't worry. Maybe one more question, I think, and then we'll be good. Does that sound good? So last question is just, do you have any other record-breaking adventures on the horizon? And then it's from the audience. The person says, did you ever want to swim across Lake Erie to Canada? Has anyone ever done that before? And I keep reading about this Buckeye State Challenge where participants are supposed to walk 1,200 miles around Ohio. But what's next? So that's an interesting one. You could come back home and you could run it, the whole perimeter of Ohio. I don't. I think
That's
like the straight parts are probably just roads, and then like that would be cool though. The northern part would be all Lake Erie, which would be pretty. I think I like know Lake Erie really, really well. So it's like all the way from Conneaut to Toledo or whatever.
Yeah.
Be a fun run. I don't know.
So the last adventure I did, it was actually supposed to be running across Ohio, but with COVID, it had to change. But yeah, maybe we can close with the video of my last adventure. It was just this past September running across Maine. Is that cool to share the last?
Yeah, share the video, and I guess we'll end with that. So, but thank you very much for visiting with us tonight, Katie. It was a great talk. I feel like I could talk about this for hours. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface, and it's been a long time already. So appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, of course. So this final video is just a 2-minute clip of that recent journey. Thanks again for joining, and yeah, thanks again, Travis, for setting this up.
Yep.
Here we go.
There's this saying that if you have a strong enough why, you can figure out how. And behind every adventure for me, my why has been water. Run for Water was an attempt to run nonstop across Maine, 138 miles, to raise funds and awareness for a Christian-based water nonprofit called Life Water International.
On September 5th, I took my first step of the journey at Holborn Gore, so it's at the Canadian border, and it took about 33 hours until reaching Freeport here in Maine.
So we officially made it halfway.
At 1:32, I really got in a funk. I didn't want to give up, but I definitely didn't want to keep going. And at the pace I was going at that point, even 5 miles away felt like this monumental task. God, through the East Point community, really lifted me up soon after I reached that low. The thing that really touched me the most is the kindness of others and the love of others, and they really made it what it was. I mean, most of my training all throughout the summer has been alone, and a lot of the East Point community, they might not necessarily have been runners, but they still showed up, and it was incredible. When I was at that lowest moment, my inclination was to try to hide it and deal with it on my own, but it was the love and support that was able to push and carry me through. Love doesn't need you to hide those lows, and in fact, it carries you through them. And that's how I know that love is more than a feeling.
All right. Well, thanks again, Katie, and thanks everyone for coming. And everyone have a good night. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.